Jaya Rādhā Madhava Punjabi Harir Jaya Jaya Rādhā Madhava Punjabi Harir Jaya Gopī Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopī Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Rādhā Punjabi Harir Gopī Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachariya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Rādhā Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gaur-Nitāya ki jai, Grantaraja Shri Chaitanya-charitamrita ki jai, Gaura Premanande. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Rādhā Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhara Śrīvāsadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Śrī Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Śrī Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Śrī Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda This morning we're reading from Chaitanya-charitamrita. I almost said Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And we're reading from Madhya-lila, this is chapter 8, called Talks Between the Lord and Ramananda Roy. And we're reading verse number 100, a famous verse, which is a quote from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So let us begin. Anayārādhito nūnam Anayārādhito nūnam bhagavān harir īśvaraḥ, bhagavān harir īśvaraḥ, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ, anayārādhito nūnam, bhagavān harir īśvaraḥ, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ. Others?
Anayārādhito nūnam, bhagavān hariḥ, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ, anayārādhito nūnam,
īśvaraḥ. Ladies? Anayārādhito nūnam, bhagavān harir, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ, anayārādhito nūnam, īśvaraḥ, yanno vihāya govindaḥ, prīto yam anayat rahaḥ. Okay, yes, one more. Anayārādhito nūnam, bhagavān harir, vihāya govindaḥ, anayad rahaḥ. Okay, what does it mean? Anayā, by her. Ārādhitaḥ, worshipped. Nūnam, indeed. Bhagavān, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hariḥ. Some of you are cheating. You have it on your mobile phones. īśvaraḥ, the Lord. Yat, from which. Nah, us. Vihāya, rejecting. Govindaḥ, Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. Prītaḥ, satisfied. Yam, whom. Anayat, brought. Rahaḥ, a secluded place. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: when the gopīs began to talk among themselves, they said, Dear friends, the gopī who has been taken away by Krishna to a secluded place must have worshipped the Lord more than anyone else. Purport: the name Rādhā is derived from this verse, Bhāgavatam 10:30-28. From the words anayārādhito, meaning by her the Lord is worshipped. Sometimes the critics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam find it difficult to find Radharani's holy name in that book. But the secret is disclosed here in the word ārādhito, from which the name Rādhā has come. Of course, the name of Radharani is directly mentioned in other Puranas. This gopī's worship of Krishna is topmost, and therefore her name is Rādhā, or the topmost worshipper. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Śrī Gurun dīnataranam. A famous verse being quoted by Ramananda Rai in his discussion with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a place which today is called Rajmundry in the south of India, in Tamil Nadu, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is traveling south from Jagannath Puri, specifically visiting Ramananda Rai because it's been recommended to him by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that after what we might like to call Sarvabhauma's conversion to Krishna Bhakti, he advises to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to meet Ramananda Roy. You've all been reading these verses, this chapter, and so you, at least many of you, will remember how this develops, how they meet, and how they are both overwhelmed with, as we say, ecstatic love, inspired by each other, inspired, in fact, by re-meeting, by reunion, because we understand, if we understand, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna, and that Ramananda Rai is none other than Vishakha Devi of Krishna Lila, then they are meeting again. And this is certainly a joyful meeting for them, in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, in a sense, it's a kind of play on the part of Lord Chaitanya, prompting Ramananda Roy to speak about Krishna consciousness, to give a progressive explanation of the advanced understandings of what is Krishna Bhakti. All of this in Chaitanya-charitamrita by Sri Kaviraj Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who was requested by the devotees of Vrindavan to compose this work in the Bengali language, in which we find, however, so many Sanskrit verses quoted, and also composed by Krishnadas Kaviraj. He himself was an accomplished Sanskritist, having before this written the Govinda Lilamrita in Sanskrit. Writing the Chaitanya-charitamrita, for what purpose? After all, there had already been composed by Srila Vrindavandas Thakur, the Chaitanya-Bhāgavatam. And Vrindavandas Thakur, we understand from Krishnadas Kaviraj, is none other than the Vyasa of Chaitanya-lila. He praises him extensively in Chaitanya-charitamrita. So why is he writing Chaitanya-charitamrita? Again, at the request of the devotees of Vrindavan, and in particular to elaborate on Lord Chaitanya's later pastimes, much of which he heard about from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. And we want to say something about Srila Raghunath Das Goswami today, because today is what? Today is the festival of Panihati, the Chida Dahi or Dadi Chida festival, which is also called sometimes the Danda Mahotsava. Why is it called the Danda Mahotsava? That we will explain in due course. Stay tuned. But first we want to say a bit about this subject and this particular verse, which, as I mentioned, is a famous verse of the Bhagavatam. Why is it famous? Well, in particular because of what Srila Prabhupada explains in the Purport. That from this verse, or more specifically from the first two words of the verse, anayā, ārādhita, is derived the name Rādhā. And so is implied that she, Śrīmati Rādhā, or Rādhā Rani meaning queen, is the best of devotees, the best of the servants of Krishna, the topmost worshipper, as Prabhupada says in the Purport. She is the topmost worshipper, and it's explained by Srila Sanatana Goswami, the topmost controller of Krishna. Krishna is referred to in the verse as īśvaraḥ, which means controller. Generally is translated as controller. We get the word aishvarya also from īśvaraḥ. Aishvarya we usually hear is translated as opulence. So it is, īśvaraḥ is the Lord of opulence or opulences. It's interesting, incidentally, that this short Anushtup verse has 4 references directly to the Lord: bhagavān, hariḥ, īśvaraḥ, and govindaḥ. So there's kind of no doubt about who the gopīs are speaking about in this verse. Even if someone may say, "Where is Krishna?" Well, how much more do you need to understand? Govinda is Krishna, and we know that Bhagavan is Krishna, and he is hariḥ. The acharyas explained, we are reminded, hariḥ means he who removes, and specifically he who removes suffering. The gopīs are very much in distress. One of the things they're in distress about at this moment, possibly, is the recognition that Krishna is under the control, ārādhitaḥ. He is controlled. This is a past passive participle for some of you who are learning Sanskrit. Bhagavatam told me this morning he's learning Sanskrit. So ārādhita is a past passive participle, simply meaning worshipped, but also, again, according to Sanatana Goswami, meaning controlled. And he explains that here the gopīs are saying, it's this gopī who is by whom Krishna is controlled, not by us. Not by us. And so they are seeking relief. They want to, of course, meet Krishna. They're searching for Krishna. They're longing for Krishna, who has disappeared suddenly and without any explanation from the rasa dance. And so they are searching. And in their searching, as they're searching, they become detectives. Because what is happening in this verse is they are arriving at a conclusion. The word nūnam, by the way, Prabhupada translates as indeed. It can express certainty, but it can also express a conjecture. So their conjecture, having seen two sets of footprints, is this conclusion. This must be this one particular gopī. So they become detectives. So that's very nice. Now, all of this, however, excuse me, is being mentioned by Ramananda Roy in this particular context of speaking with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who we may want to say knows all of this, because after all, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He is Krishna himself. But what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doing in this section, in this conversation? He is urging Ramananda Roy, speak more, say something more. Eho bahya, that is external, he says in the beginning. Age kaha say something more. And he says that several times. Eho bahya, age kaha you can say something more, something more, something more. That's okay. And then he says, Eho hoy. That's okay. At a certain point, he's saying, okay, now you're talking about bhakti more directly, so that's nice, but keep speaking. And then he starts speaking about the different relationships of serving the Lord. He talks about dasya rasa, and then sakya rasa, and I'm not sure if he mentions vatsalya here. I think so, yes. And then Lord Chaitanya says, keep going, and then he speaks about the gopīs. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, you're getting there. Keep going. And this is when Ramananda Roy speaks these verses about Srimati Radharani. So he's making this, he's pushing the envelope, as we would say today. And I think what's interesting for us, broadly speaking, is something we can all be reflecting on. We understand our movement is a preaching movement. And one way I was thinking about this, what is preaching? Preaching, we may want to say, is making space for bhakti. We live in a world which is clouded over. We may want to say this world is one big cloud of ignorance, of covering. And what we're doing in our practice of Krishna consciousness, it goes so much together. Our own practice, and Srila Prabhupada used the word so many times, preaching. Now, preaching has this negative connotation for many people. Don't preach to me, right? Okay, I won't preach to you, but kindly forget everything you've heard, as Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur says. I put a straw between my teeth and I say, my dear sir, as Srila Prabhupada would explain, please forget everything you have learned and take up this Krishna consciousness. We are in following in the footsteps of our previous acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada in his preaching and all of the previous acharyas, we are making an effort to make space for bhakti. Make room for bhakti. We could have t-shirts. Make room for bhakti. And then people will ask, what is bhakti? Ah, you have asked a very nice question. Now is the beginning of your spiritual life. You are asking a good question. What is bhakti? Let me tell you what is bhakti. So, making space. And this is what Krishnadas Kaviraj is reporting, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his preaching, is making space. He's pushing the envelope. He's going beyond what is generally known. You may remember at the beginning of this conversation, what is Ramananda's, this is a quiz. What is Ramananda Roy's first answer to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Yes. Yes, varnashram, but what about varnashram? Yes. You do your duty for the pleasure of Vishnu. Yes. What is it? Varnashrama charavata. Vata, yes. Purushena parapuman. Vishnur ārādhite panta. Na anyat. Nanyatat tosha karanam. There's no other way than practicing varnashram for Vishnu. That's what he starts with, but he doesn't end with that, because eho bahya, that's external. Notice, however, that Lord Chaitanya doesn't reject that statement. He just says, that's external, that's okay, but we're speaking in private here. It's kind of a curious thing about this whole conversation, the Ramananda Samvada, that it's a private conversation. And you may wonder, as I wonder, how is it that we know anything about that conversation? Because it was completely private. Was somebody sneaking in their recording device? How is this? Or did Ramananda Roy later, when he came to Puri, report it, which he shouldn't have done, because Lord Chaitanya said, this is secret, don't tell anybody this. Did he report it to Swarup Damodar, whom Krishnadas Kaviraj received apparently his karacha from his notebook? Or did he hear it from Raghunath Das Goswami? Raghunath Das Goswami, ki jai. Let me proceed now to bring us to today's occasion, because Raghunath Das is appropriately mentioned also in the context of what we are reading today. Raghunath Das Goswami, as you may know, wrote many stotras, many verses, many verses and stotras especially, quite many. I was surprised. I confess, I looked it up today on Wikipedia. Silent. Everyone is shocked. The Swami uses Wikipedia. And what did I find there? I found a list of 30 different works by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. I wasn't aware. I didn't know there's that many. In any case, one of his prayers is the Mana Shiksha. Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai. One of his prayers is the Mana Shiksha. Mana, mind, Shiksha, instruction to the mind. So it's nice to reflect how Srila Raghunath Das Goswami may have been instructing his own mind in writing these 8 prayers. First of all, giving advice to the mind to worship the Guru. Guru goshte goshtala yishu sujane busura gane svamantre shri namni rajanava yuvadvanva harane sada dambam hitva kuru ratim purvam atitaram aye svantardatas chatubiraviyache tritaprada. Hitva dambam, giving up pride. Raghunath Das Goswami is a very nice model for us in giving up pride. How he demonstrated this. His utter determination, first of all, to take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this is where the story of the Chiradahi Mahotsava comes in. Raghunath Das had met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before, apparently, either Sanatana Goswami or Rupa Goswami. And according to, it is said that Raghunath was 15 years old when he met Lord Chaitanya first. And at that time, he resolved, I'm going to take shelter of him. There was a problem. And what was the problem? The problem was his family, who were all Vaishnavas. His family was a wealthy family, and they wanted Raghunath Das to continue the tradition, the line, to be married, to continue their position as wealthy Vaishnavas. But that's not what Raghunath wanted. And so, after so many attempts to escape from his family, actually running away, and being guarded, being kept, the story is, it's mentioned in Chaitanya-charitamrita, that his mother even suggested that they tie him up. Tie him up. We'll keep him at home that way. It's a little hard to imagine, but okay. His father, Govardhan Majumdar, fortunately said, no, that's not going to work. Even if you tie him up, he'll find a way to escape. And sure enough, he did escape. But initially, it wasn't exactly escaping, it was visiting. He went to visit Nityananda Prabhu together with his associates at the place called Panihati. Panihati is north of Kolkata, along the Ganga, and therefore we read that when Raghunath Das came, he arrived and kept himself at a distance from Nityananda Prabhu, who was sitting under a large tree. I believe that tree is still there, or maybe it's a descendant of the tree, on a platform together with his associates, his friends. Someone mentions to Nityananda Prabhu, Raghunath Das is here. Raghunath Das is here? Where is he? Oh, he's back there. Raghunath Das, what are you doing back there? You are cheating me, says Nityananda Prabhu. What do you mean cheating? By denying me your company. Come over here. We can imagine Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda apparently had a quite booming voice, and he was very, he was. Who is Nityananda Prabhu? He is none other than Balaram. So he commands him to come forward. Balaram, of course, commanded Yamuna to come to him. He commands Raghunath to come to him, and he punishes him. How does he punish him? First of all, he puts his feet on Raghunath's head. Terrible thing to do. Imagine somebody just puts their feet on your head. How would you feel? How would you feel if Nityananda Prabhu put his feet on your head? Hariva! Nityananda Prabhu ki. But his punishment didn't end there. His punishment, he said, you must be punished. Danda, that's where Danda Mahotsava comes from. I want you to feed everyone here now. We will have a festival, and you're going to pay for it. It was no problem for Raghunath. He was wealthy. Apparently, when he ran away, he had his pockets full of gold. In any case, it was this season, this is beginning of June, it's quite hot and also very muggy. It's very humid in Bengal at this time. So it's a time for, when you have something, it's a time for cooling foods. So it was a time for dahi, or dahi. How do you say in Bengali? Dahi. Dahi. Dahi? Doi, yes. And flat rice, chira dahi. And I guess the bananas are always ripe in Bengal, right? So no problem getting bananas. Now, the word spread. There's a festival. In Bengal, if there's prasad distribution, everybody hears about it very quickly. Everyone was showing up, and then more were showing up. And the merchants who sell the bananas and the dahi and the doi and everything else, they were showing up, and so on. No problem. Raghunath paid for them. So, in this way, everyone was having a great time, but there was such a crowd that there was no space, and people were wading into the Ganga, and they were receiving their two pots. Everyone was getting 2 pots of this preparation. Now, I don't know what kind of arrangement there will be here for Chidadahi, but I remember many years ago, some of you will know very well that His Holiness Jaipataka Swami really likes to celebrate this festival. He used to celebrate it a lot in Atlanta, in Georgia, in the US. But one year, he was in Serbia. We had a sort of summer camp there, and he was present at that. So he started organizing some days in advance. And they organized big plastic containers and lots of fruit and lots of rice. It was just rice because you couldn't get flat rice. And lots of yogurt. And then Maharaj engaged everybody in making the preparations, and he himself would go around and organize and check and see. So there were different mixtures of rice and yogurt and this fruit, another fruit, another fruit, another fruit. So this is, for me, a very happy memory on this occasion. But what I want to say, as the conch blows, reminding me of the time, what I want to say is that Raghunath Das is for us a very nice model of humility. Damba hitva, he gave up his humility. He went to he extended his efforts as far as necessary, and this meant humbling himself in wonderful ways before all of the devotees, such that, of course, Nityananda Prabhu, but all the devotees who were present, blessed him so that he could then have association, come into the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He does so, and as you know, most of you will know, that's described in the 6th chapter of the Madhya-lila. He does so in a process of becoming more and more and more and more austere in his eating. And that austerity doesn't end in Puri. That austerity extends to when he goes to Vrindavan. He lives in Vrindavan for so many years. He tells, he gives classes on his personal experiences with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it's for that reason, especially, that Krishnadas Kaviraj mentions him and prays to him at the end of each chapter of the Chaitanya-charitamrita. And when Srila Sanatana Goswami departs the world, then Raghunath Das gives up eating all solid food, and he takes only some buttermilk in a leaf cup. It's said that he would take 1 cup per day of buttermilk. And then when Rupa Goswami left, it said he stopped eating altogether. Hare Krishna. So, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami ki jai. Grantaraj Śrī Chaitanya-charitamrita ki jai. So much more could be said on the subject of this verse. That's just some prompting of our thoughts, our reflections, and I pray that you may be inspired to always find shelter in the words of Chaitanya-charitamrita. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.